So in the last video, we looked at the main types of epilepsy, but there are different subtypes of those main types that we looked at already. So when we go back to partial seizures, you can have simple partial or complex partial. And the only difference between those is that the simple partial does not affect consciousness, so the individual remains conscious, and the complex partial leads to a loss of consciousness. So both of these, the second part of it, is the same. So the seizure starts in one small region of the brain and may spread to other areas of the brain or the other side of the brain. But with simple partial, they do not lose consciousness. With complex partial, they do lose consciousness. So for the partial group, we only have two subtypes. For the generalized group, we have the motor versus the non-motor. And there are 6 different types of generalized seizures, and I believe just one of them is non-motor. So this generalized absence is basically just absence of attention, or awareness. So generalized absence or petit mal seizures are a sudden lapse in awareness and responsiveness. Basically looks like just brief staring spells or daydreaming. And then we get into the generalized motor seizures, and that's generalized myoclonic. And these are relatively small. So these are like single jerks of a muscle group or group of muscles, and it doesn't last any more than a second or two. And when you think about clonic versus myoclonic, it's just a duration kind of a thing, right? So the myoclonic doesn't last very long. The clonic lasts for at least a minute, and it's causing jerking in various parts of the body. And if you remember from our definitions before, what we're talking about now is clonic, which is those jerking movements. So myoclonic and just regular clonic. Myoclonic being quick jerks that only last for a second or two. Clonic being prolonged jerking movements. So we did the clonic, which is the jerking movements, and now we have generalized tonic, and you can kind of think of like tonic and tone. It's just like increased tone or increased stiffness. And this can happen when a person is asleep or awake, and it's that brief stiffening of the body, arms or legs. And if the person is standing, if that stiffness happens, then they can lose their balance and they will fall if they are standing or even if they're sitting. And remember, that one is just the tonic, so they're only going to experience the stiffening. The clonic and myoclonic are only clonic, so they're only going to experience the jerking. But this particular image, the whole thing, includes tonic-clonic because the tonic-clonic seizures are a combination of both, right? There is the rigidity at the beginning, and then there is the jerking that happens later. So definition-wise, that's the body stiffens, and they have the tonic phase, and then the limbs begin to jerk rhythmically, and that is the clonic phase. So the generalized tonic-clonic, originally considered the grand mal seizure, is often the classic one that you will see represented in movies, and that you kind of first think about. If someone's having a seizure, this is the one that you will think about. And that includes both the tonic phase and the clonic phase. And the next one that we're going to move into is general atonic. And I just, based on the name, I want you to think about what would an atonic seizure mean. And we think about how words are done, right? A at the beginning of a word means it does not have that thing. So atonic is a seizure that is a sudden loss of tone. so it's missing the tone, and the person will often fall to the ground, or if anyone has ever like fallen asleep while you are sitting up, it's that sudden head nod. But instead of just being tired, this is something where they just lose that muscle tone and their head will fall forward. It doesn't happen for very long. It's a brief seizure, and it's just loss of muscle control or tone. And so all of these are the specific subtypes of those partial seizures or generalized seizures. And what we'll move into in the next video is looking at specifically what are we going to target in order to treat these disorders.